The world is changing at breathtaking speeds, with trends and fads popping up and passing away at breakneck pace. Against that backdrop of nearly constant upheaval, we welcome you to the Sunday Scotch Society. Over delectable, sumptuous scotches and with the occasional good cigar in hand, we have open, honest, and uninhibited conversation about whatever strikes our fancy. Whether it's the critical issue of the day or a deep dive down the rabbit hole, we take it all seriously while having a good time. Join us for a stiff drink and a great conversation. Good day to you, Matthew.
Good day to you, Quincy.
Today's episode is one that I've been looking forward to. When I proposed this little journey to you, there were certain experiences that I was looking forward to us sharing together. One of those experiences being a particular list of single malt scotches that are sort of at the top of my personal list of best Scotch experiences. Two of those Scotches come from the Edrington family. Three of them, actually, now that I think about it. The first being the Macallan. There's a particular Macallan expression that is possibly my second favorite Scotch of all time. Then there is the famous Grouse, which is the number one Scotch in Scotland. And it is the expressions that I like from the famous Grouse, particularly the one that I am fond of, is something called the famous Grouse Smoky Black. And the third entry from the Edrington catalog that is in my top, let's say, 5 Scotches, top 6 Scotches of all time. And this list is pretty stable since 2001. Is this the Scotch that I've brought for us to try today? I brought it last week, but you were away. And so I had to, unfortunately, I had a non-drinker guest. And so she couldn't really, experience, she could smell it and whatever else, but no, that's not the same. And so I'm especially looking forward to tasting with you today the Glenrothes 12-year-old. It is a Speyside single malt, which means it's from the lowlands of Scotland. They are one of the few distilleries that still use spring water from the grounds directly outside of the distillery, so that their spring water is, filtered through mountain stone as it makes its way into the distillery, and it is one of the they call them the four corners. It's one of the primary ingredients in what makes this Scotch stand out as it does. The other things that are special about it, it's aged exclusively in sherry casks. And this actually was released as a part of Glenrothes' Soleo collection, which is a group of sherry cask aged whiskies. Soleo is the style of sun aging that the Jimenez sherry grapes go through to make, some of the really exceptional sherries out there. So these casks are already ripe and rich with flavor. And then the Glenrothes exclusively uses those casks to sit this Scotch in for 12 years. And it's bottled with the natural color. So that's what it naturally, they didn't add anything to it. They just poured it out of the cask into the bottles, and then they shipped it off to here for us to go to have, and whatever.
To have and to hold.
To have and to hold until death or alcohol poisoning do us part. So, this is one of my definite top 6. The other 3 would be the Balvenie 21-year-old aged in Portwood, the Lafroig 10-year-old, which is my favorite smoky Scotch of all time, and the Oban 14-year-old, which was my first favorite Scotch and will always be on my list of top Scotches as my first favorite Scotch. It's still extraordinary Scotch. I'm not suggesting that it isn't. The sentimentality is important, but it's damn good Scotch. So, with no further ado, I wish to open this Scotch and allow us to do the thing.
Let us do the thing.
All righty.
That's actually pretty warm.
Mm-hmm.
It's not overly fruity. Not that most Scotches are, but I confess that I glanced at the label.
Oh, you did. Of course you did.
It's interesting. I don't know what to make of it yet. It's very difficult to describe.
Mm-hmm.
It's slightly sweet. Not quite sure where to fit that. Almost just a hint of fig.
Okay.
Very strange. Butterscotch, of course.
Mm-hmm.
But just cozy. It's not super light, but it's not overly in your face.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It feels warm on the nose.
So, I will ascribe. I actually think the tasting, the smelling notes here on the manufacturer's notes are pretty accurate. Vanilla, cinnamon, a little bit of melon, which I think you are you're picking up on with the fig. The thing that the butterscotch to me that's a classic lowland Scotch kind of aroma. And you get it in some of the smoother Highland Scotches as well, like the Glens, the Glenmorangie and the Glenlivet, the Glenfiddich, and the Glenfarclas, which we're going to talk about Glenfarclas another time. That is
Glens, sir.
Yeah, there are more, as the Glenrothes would show, right? But yeah, for me, the overriding aroma from this is that fusion of the vanilla and the cinnamon. And I think it's the cinnamon that's giving it that warmth that you're talking about, like maybe baking spices or something like that.
Even though I saw the cinnamon on the label, I am not able to pick it out as a single note,
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a stand-in for, the word cinnamon there is a stand-in for like baking spices. Those things that almost fruitcake or a really rich, flavorful spice cake type.
Yeah, although I'm loath to go there.
I know we have our issues with. I
confess that it is, a truly good fruitcake, and I have to say such things do exist. They are rare.
But they do
does
exist.
impart a similar feel.
Yeah, I didn't say it tastes like fruitcake, just to be clear.
This is just the nose where.
Yeah.
Well, okay. Well, let's see if I can pick up any of this vanilla.
Mm-hmm.
Down the hatch.
Down the hatch, indeed. Skull, slancha, all those good things.
Oh, that is nice. Not a particularly descriptive word, but it springs forth.
Just let it sit and develop for a minute. Well, not a minute because we don't want all that dead air, but you know what I mean. Yeah.
Zero acridness.
Mm-hmm.
Just, again, not an overly descriptive word, smooth.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There's the vanilla.
Mm-hmm.
That is, yeah, by now, what is this? We're in the teens in episodes. I'd have thought that my vocabulary would have developed a little, but it's definitely more on the dried fruit than cooked fruit side.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
No citrus. I'm picking up, not at all.
Mm-hmm. For me, there's the only thing that I would add is like a dense fruit like banana type situation in there as well to play off of that, because it's not just vanilla. It's a complicated fruit, that I like. And one of the things that I wanted to point out is that we have this beautiful 12-year-old Scotch, and you and I have had, similarly aged Scotches over the course of the last however many episodes. And one of the things about a 12-year-old Scotch is that that's kind of for aged Scotches. 12-year-old, below the 6-figure or 5-figure bottle price mark. A 12-year-old Scotch is kind of like a middle-aged, Scotch, and they can require a bit of tempering, right? Some people find with a 12-year-old Scotch you need a drop of water to help open up the flavors, or maybe serve it, God forbid, on ice, or whatever the case may be. But for me, this is one of the few 12-year-old Scotches that I don't think require any help to make it drinkable. And I think that the adding of the distilled water, which usually helps to open up flavors that might be masked by the alcohol content, I personally, I don't think it's necessary with this. To me, this is like, the reason it's in my top 6 is because it's almost the perfect Scotch. It's really, really incredible.
I don't find much to argue with what you're saying there.
That's good. I'm glad.
That is...
Although argument makes for good radio.
Stuff,
but yeah, well, there you go. That is why I brought it for you, my friend. Yes.
Well, I think when a whiskey shuts you up, that's enough said.
Indeed. Wow. Indeed. So, initially, this conversation was supposed to be about something else. And as I was preparing for this conversation, a story popped up that I thought I couldn't not discuss with you. it's in the tech area, it's in the culture area, it's in the big data AI area. It is also in the genomics and human biology area. It's a very complicated issue, and I think it also has a a sort of a complicated moral and ethical universe, which I know is that's your bailiwick. You like complications, so that's the mosquito killer. No, it's not Matthew slapping me or me hitting.
You know what? Yeah. We have to make a Sunday Scotch Society drinking game. Of this. So, dear listener, as you sit and sip with us, I encourage you to just take an extra tipple anytime you hear that mosquito killer kick in.
Yeah, that sounds like a good idea. God help him.
I know I certainly will.
Yeah. Oh, Lord, I could imagine if they are sitting there with a glass of scotch, listening to this if they have to drink every time they hear that. All right. Well,
perhaps they'll learn to temper their sips.
Perhaps. So anyway, the thing that I'm talking about, of course, is the successful implantation of the Neuralink chip into the brain of a human volunteer after the chip has been tested on monkeys and pigs.
Yes.
Exclusively up to now. Those monkeys and pigs, by and large, have reportedly not shown tremendous adverse effects, the majority of them, but some of them have shown issues and problems. And yet, a gentleman whose name is not being released for whatever reasons has agreed to have his brain be the test ground for this new technology, which Elon Musk, he launched Neuralink in 2016 to try and create a man-machine symbiosis for any number of reasons. I mean, of course, one can see the positive applications that he discussed, but one can also see some potential downsides of having a chip the size of a quarter inserted into your brain and having wires running out of that chip and poked into your brain with the intent of controlling either technology or motor functions or potentially even other things. So I think that is a neutral enough introduction to the Neuralink implantation, and I would like to get your thoughts on it as an event and it as a sign, if it is a sign of the times, and what you think it means in the grand scheme of things.
Don't start easy.
This is the Sunday Scotch Society. We don't do easy.
Well,
let me rephrase. We're not afraid of complicated, I think is a better way to say it.
Or even complex. So...
complex like this scotch. Oh, my goodness.
Well... So, this is a long time coming. obviously, Neuralink is not the first company to go down this road, endeavoring to develop this technology and, with the claims of helping humanity, for which I see no countervailing evidence. Intentions do not equal outcomes. I say that up front.
The road to hell and all of that.
Yes. Mm-hmm. But I think we should just frame this up with the context that Musk sort of has publicly said he thinks about this with, right? Mm-hmm. So obviously, first applications to help people who would greatly benefit from the help, but long term, mid to long term, the idea that the human brain can keep up with the capabilities of AI coming online. We're only a year and a half out from the release of the first public ChatGPT. Mm-hmm. Things are progressing at crazy rates. If you follow this at all, some of the drama surrounding OpenAI, the company, which is actually a nonprofit organization that owns the for-profit company, mm-hmm. brings up a lot of issues about governance around the entities that are actually doing this research and releasing this stuff to the public, and whether or not it's best to use an open source model or where everybody gets a hold of this stuff, or if people should be holding things back, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? But those floodgates are open. So the question is, how are humans going to have a chance in hell of keeping up with this stuff? And also, in terms of our capabilities as humanity going into the future physically, and perhaps even, dare I say, transhumanistically.
So your framing is that since the floodgates of AI have already opened, mm-hmm. we should...
Should is a...
stick a chip in our brain and try to become a hybrid. I mean, this is not the advent of cyborg technology. I mean, there are people walking around with, limbs and other body parts that are regulated by technology of a similar sort. Certainly, I don't think anything this advanced or developed. So I'm not saying that this dude is the first cyborg, but I'm certainly saying that it sounds like what you're saying is that this is just the logical next step, and what's the big deal?
No, I didn't say that. It is the logical next step. I would frame it as being inevitable. I'm not attaching a morality to it. Mm-hmm. I'm just saying that this is happening. It was bound to happen, right? It was going to happen whether we like it or not. The same way that AI is progressing the way it is, whether we like it or not. So the question is really, with both of these things happening, what do we do? What is the course that we can choose as humanity from this point? And everyone is going to have different answers as to what we should do. I'm not trying to prescribe that to anyone in particular. Now, personally, which I'm sure colors my point of view in terms of how I discuss it with everyone else. But, for the most part, I keep them separate. personally, I'm Borging up, bro. Okay, as things become available, I have no particular desire to die within the next few decades, few centuries, right? Even if I were to live for 1,000 years, right? That is the blink of an eye in terms of the cosmos, even in terms of this planet, right?
I read on that subject, I read a sentence in a novel that I'm reading that I thought, when you said what you said just now, I couldn't help but recall it. It's like a guy was standing and contemplating a rock and saying, 100,000 years seems like such an incredibly, inconceivably long time to a human, but to a rock, it's just a long afternoon.
Yes.
And I was like, wow.
Even in the making of the rock, that's a long afternoon. If you were in the Bahamas, you pick up a rock with a shell in it, right? That thing could be millions of years old. Like, so I'm not saying that I could die tomorrow or I could live a natural human lifespan, but I have no particular want to go out anytime soon, right? And I also don't. The embodiment of consciousness is more important than a lot of people give it credit for. So everyone who's thinking, okay, it's just your brain. Well, the nervous system is everywhere, and the way that all interacts with each other, and the subconscious versus the conscious mind and everything. People get a little too carried away with just the quote-unquote mind, right? It's not as if the mind is just this thing behind your eyes. So that said, though, if we are approaching where we can create synthetic minds, right? Synthetic biology, or not to confuse that with actual, like, going and making biomaterials and synthetic life. What I meant by that was synthetic simulacrum of the body, right? Also not going to be a huge difference in that. So if you could start to upload mind, that's going to come along with all the feelings of the gut, the legs, and the hands and the rest of it. So what I'm saying is the embodiment problem is not a huge issue, right? If you could transfer a human into an abstract computational medium, right? Meaning you really live in the matrix. You're just a program that's running, Mr. Smith. I don't see an immediate moral problem with that. Now, the broader context, sure. It's not as if it's going to be a one-to-one and we could just move into the computer and then everything will be the same. No, there's a lot of issues here.
There are.
That are going to create even more issues and emergent problems, and also solutions. And also, well, solutions being I should never use this word without context.
The ultimate solution, could just be, as Skynet determined, all humans have to die.
Yeah, well, okay, we'll get into that.
But I think that's no. Sorry.
So here's the thing. I'm not against transhumanists. I don't think that they are an abomination to the earth, as some people, particularly religious people, seem to think. I also think that if we have any chance at all of having more than a pet relationship with the AIs of the future, and listen, a lot of dogs and cats have great lives.
Okay.
It's not necessarily going to be bad.
Let me stop you there. Let me stop you there, because I don't think anybody is contemplating being a cat or a dog to an AI. Okay, that's just not a thing. Number one. Number two.
They don't have to contemplate it.
Number two, you are so far off the reservation that I feel like we're having a different conversation.
I'm laying the groundwork, right? This is the inevitable future.
I don't know that I agree that it's inevitable, but okay. If that's your view, that's fine.
You are entitled to be wrong.
I am.
As we have established.
As we have many, many times.
As I am entitled to be wrong as well. Right?
I mean, you said it, not me. So when the eventuality proves that you are in fact wrong, remember that you said that, not me. No, but what I'm getting at, why I stopped you is because in this limited conversation, I don't want to forget that what we're talking about is a chip implanted into a human brain with the intention for that chip to allow the human subject to control technology and possibly some of his own body functions, with the stated goal of perhaps helping people recover the use of limbs that were for whatever reason unresponsive and that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. So yes, down that path is transhumanism, but there are other paths down which we could go. And I don't know that any one path is inevitable, mainly because choice is involved. Oh dear, now I sound like I'm talking about the Matrix, right? But, I mean, it's the red pill or the blue pill, right? No, but I think that is, frankly speaking, for me, that was the brilliance of the Matrix, was recognizing that the ultimate path that a society takes is dependent on the choices of the people in that society. You choose which step you're going to take. Every step down a particular path is a choice. Whether you are conscious of that choice, whether you intend the consequences of that choice are not, they do not absolve you of making the choice in the first place. And so this is my question about either the ethics or the morality of Neuralink sticking a chip in this dude's brain. Right? Number one, it was Neuralink's choice to develop this technology.
Yes.
Number two, it was Neuralink's choice to decide that it was going to take this technology from theoretical construct and try to create this product in reality. Number three, it was Neuralink's choice to then start testing this product with the ultimate goal of human implantation. Then it was this guy's decision to be the test subject. And every step along this path that we are taking involves, that's a drink.
That is a drink.
Oh, hallelujah. That is good.
So good.
I mean, and you see how it's opening up to get a little fruitier and, it's so much. All right. So every step along this path has been the result of a determined choice. And that's my question. Oh God, that's another drink. These mosquitoes got to stop, man.
Death to them all.
Yes, but at a slower pace, please. I don't want to finish the bottle during the show. No, but okay. at each moment of choice.
At each moment.
Good God, here we go again.
Listen, we're going to modify this within a minute.
Okay.
For every snap within a minute, we'll take a sip.
Well, it was because somebody opened the door and a bunch of them flew in. That's what happened. Right? Anyway, but at each point of choice, certainly the chooser had to weigh their ethical,
not at all,
and moral obligations.
No, you are misconstruing what a choice is in its entirety, I think.
Help me out.
First of all, setting aside whether free will exists at all or not.
Okay.
Your stated assumption that they must weigh anything, much less the morality of something, before they make a choice, is simply erroneous. They don't have to do any of that. They just simply have to make a choice. Now, whether that choice is as simple as I will walk this way, I will sign this document, I will create this company, or more complex, I will create this company for this purpose within this context and headhunt these particular people because I have a vision, blah, 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 right? This is part of the concern that is highlighted by the OpenAI fiasco, firing of the CEO and then rehiring, is that no, these things do not have to be contemplated before a choice is made.
But I'm not, okay, fair enough.
And then the layer on top of that, which I think trumps it all, is that even though these individuals do make choices, right? Should contemplate consequences. The broader dynamics of the society, for instance, capitalism of America, is going to drive certain outcomes with particular probability. So it's not certain that certain things will happen, but it's highly likely. So if OpenAI didn't do certain things, Google already had a lot of technology through DeepMind and then insourcing a lot of the stuff to rival what OpenAI released. And they didn't. It was choices.
I don't dispute that, yes, but that's a choice.
Right? But it's a matter of timeline. 5 years in Silicon Valley is the blink of, not the blink of an eye, is an eon. But in humanity's perspective, it's a blink of an eye. Okay, so if Google didn't face competition from OpenAI last year or the year before, what's the difference to humanity on the long scale if they just took 5 years to start releasing the stuff?
I don't dispute what you're saying. What I'm saying is I think it should be, and I am using a moral construct where I think that people are responsible for the outcomes of their choices. And I recognize that not everyone will agree with that moral construct.
Yeah, sure.
But I think that it is not possible to absolve oneself of the outcome of one's choices. And therefore, any choice that you make, especially one that has potential unforeseen consequences, should be considered. And it should be considered from a perspective of, and I know that I'm going to totally cut him for saying this, but it should be considered from the perspective of right and wrong. There are some absolutes, and whatever those absolutes might be, the fact that every society, every culture, every community, every human construct has a concept of this is right and this is wrong. Whatever those actions may be in the grand scheme of things.
Sip up.
Yes, launch it. And however different what is right and what is wrong might be in different cultures, the concepts themselves, to me, demonstrate that there are absolute moralities in the universe. Right? Some things are right and some things are wrong.
Yeah.
And if that is true, which I grant you is in some people's minds a big if, if that is true, then Elon Musk and the folks at Neuralink have a responsibility to consider the rightness or wrongness of sticking a chip the size of a quarter with wires sticking out of it into a dude's brain and waiting to see what happens.
So let's talk about what some of those consequences could be. But before we do that, right, let me just contextualize where I agree and don't agree with you so that we don't veer off, right? So I will take issue with your use of the word absolute in terms of right and wrongs. If we're talking about shoulds, however, right, you can't have a should without right and wrong. They're part and parcel. The question is, so in relation to what, right? So while there are no, from my point of view, absolute truths of right and wrong, there are absolute truths as in there's either an electron or not. All of you quantum mechanics pedants, I understand that is not completely correct, but let's just move on.
Email Matthew B. Kelly at what is it? Matthew B. Kelly.
The point is
ScotchSociety.com.
The point is we can investigate a fundamental particle in the universe, right? And that is fundamental insofar as we investigated so far. But in terms of some other planet in this galaxy or another with a conscious, intelligent life form society, for lack of a better word, they could do things that are just completely, utterly abhorrent to us. But it's right for them. So the fundamentals from which I move forward in terms of morality is, okay, we're talking about humanity and perhaps what humanity cares about. So someone who's in Greenpeace is going to have a different morality than someone who's a techno-futurist. But the thing is, we're talking about humanity.
Yes.
Okay. So what's fundamental to me about humanity is I am team human. So I want humans to persist. Now, that doesn't mean I want a lot of collateral damage on Earth, but I want them to persist into the future.
Yes.
Okay. So let's talk about some of these consequences, potential consequences of sticking a quarter-sized micro neural array into somebody's head, right? Of which Neuralink is the latest, but not the only one. Okay, there are other arrays. The Utah array is, if you want to look that up, listener. So Neuralink is not the only set of people who need to think about this. Okay, so what are some of the consequences that come to top of mind? Not even concern you, but that should be thought about.
So ultimately, my view is, okay, I will not accuse you of a philosophy or ascribe to you based on what you have said a philosophy like moral relativism or whatever the case may be, right? But what I will say is this. If you take the continued discovery journey that science is on, right? Every time there's a discovery, it asks more questions, and you dig and you dig and you find a deeper truth, and you dig and you dig and you find another deeper truth behind that, and you dig and you dig and you continue to find that underneath everything there's something else. The implication of that to me is that as you continue to dig, you get closer and closer and closer to whatever the fundamental absolute is at the bottom of all of that digging. That's my interpretation of the journey of science. They're trying to ask a question. The scientific method is, I have a theory,
No.
Yes.
Have a hypothesis.
Same difference.
No.
Totally, yes, Matthew. I know the pedants are going to shoot us in the head.
I think they should on that one.
Okay, fair enough. I have a hypothesis, and I believe that my hypothesis can lead to a truth. Therefore, I will do some experiments to try and prove my hypothesis beyond a shadow of doubt. And once I have proved my hypothesis sufficiently, I will call it true. Right? You can't argue with that part.
I could, but it is pointless. So let's go.
All right. Oh, and ladies and gentlemen who are listening, I have been spanked by station management about the length of the show. So I'm going to remind you that we will end the Guardian Talk Radio version of the show at an hour, and then you can go to our feed
on sundayscotch.com
and hear the rest of the conversation, which we'll see. But the point I'm trying to get at is, I don't think that you can be team human and not consider whether or not there are things that should and shouldn't be done.
We're not in disagreement with that.
Right. And I guess my question to you ultimately is this a thing you think that should be done? Not, is this a thing that can be done? Because can and cannot has never been an issue for us. The Tower of Babel in scriptural philosophy, let's call it, is an entirely Judeo-Christian conception of the idea that there's no such thing as can't. There's only will and will not, should and should not. And so my question is this a thing that should or should not be done?
Here's the thing. Before I give you the simple yes or no answer, right? It's not that there are just one or two consequences. There's a slew, and they compete. So there can be good outcomes and bad outcomes, and they're not mutually exclusive at all. Some of them are, but for the most part, there are. I got to agree with Saul here. There are no solutions. They're just compromises, trade-offs, right? So generally, you get a solution, but you don't think of it like, oh, this thing is like the golden chalice that fixes everything. No, you do one thing. There are opportunity costs, and also there are unintended consequences, and some of the
behold, I have become death.
Yeah. But at the same time, since you brought it up, right, the Russians were only a little bit behind the Americans. The Americans did some very questionable things to get some of the former German scientists on certain things that came after that initial program, right? But at the end of the day, because there were two superpowers and the game dynamics worked out that it was stable if only two players had these world-ending devices, that neither one of them would use it. Now, we are exiting that period, right, which makes it super scary because you get a bunch of small players who can't have the same dynamics. But the point is that we had to trade off some stuff in order to live in a world where we had nuclear weapons, but we didn't use nuclear weapons. So, should we do it? Yes. Yes, we should. But it's going to be collateral damage. And we can mitigate a lot of it. We can't mitigate all of it. And we should do as much as we can to mitigate as much as we can.
So, we'll clarify what question you are answering. should Neuralink stick a chip in a guy's head? Yes or no?
Yes.
Why?
Because the potential upsides outweigh the potential downsides. And at the end of the day, we have to do a simple calculus. How we get to that simple calculus is really, really complicated. But at the end of the day, we have to weigh it, yes or no.
And what is the calculus that is in as condensed and understandable a fashion as possible? Because I've been told that you and I sometimes can be a little obtuse, me more than you. But how are you arriving at what for you is a clearly moral decision or ethical decision, and those two things are different, that this is a thing that should be done, sticking a chip in a guy's head?
I think humanity should have access to this technology.
You're going to Borg up whatever happens. So
yeah,
I already know that that's your thing.
Yeah, I'm Borging up. But I mean, I have thought about, should I Borg up? But I think that humanity, on the whole, should have access to this technology. Mm-hmm. Now, the thing is, unfortunately, in developing medical stuff, right, you're going to have complications. So those things are unavoidable. Like that, some people are going to get messed up because of it, right? No matter how careful you are. For instance, right, one of the bugaboos of developing this type of technology for a very long time has been you stick what is essentially a wire into a nerve cell, or any cell for that matter, but especially in nerve cells. They don't like foreign stuff.
No, they don't, yeah.
Okay, so your immune system is going to attack it, and if it can't degrade it, then it sends in the fibroblasts, which basically do as good a job as it can of covering it up, isolating it from the system. So that means that either your implants are going to mess up the cell, or be degraded, or be covered up, and the effectiveness of the signal will go down, right? And because of that, you could get damage to cells. Not even talking about the implantation. The implantation, one of the huge things has been the hemorrhaging that will happen in the brain, because to get to where you want to get to, you got to go through some, micron level vasculature in there. Mm-hmm. And so bad things are going to happen along this path. But on the other side of this, once all of that is perfected as much as it can be, what lies open to us is you get your arm chopped off in an accident. Not only do you get to have an electromechanical arm put on, but you can control it with your brain.
So
the blind will be able to see. The deaf will be able to hear.
These are amazingly wonderful potentialities. I guess it's the same question medicine has been asking for the entirety of the profession's existence, mm-hmm. right? How many people have to die or be damaged or permanently
disfigured,
disabled, whatever the case may be, in order to justify a scientific, quote unquote, or medical, quote unquote, advance. Mm-hmm. That will, and it's a question, right? You sacrifice a few to help the many, and who decides which few to sacrifice? Yeah, and what's the criteria for sacrificing them?
Medical trials, the ethics on paper, we could be clear there. The ethics on paper of medical trials are extremely stringent these days.
And yet.
What I'm saying is that it's not as if people are not thinking about this.
How much of this, and we are down to about 3 or 4 minutes before we have to sign off from Guardian Talk Radio here. So this is maybe this is the best way to close this portion of the show, is how much of this is profit driven, number one, and maybe more importantly, no, forget the profit driven question. We'll talk about that in the other side of the show.
Next segment.
Yeah, but the fact is, you're going to rely, well, I mean, maybe it's not a fact, so let me rephrase. What it seems to me is that you're going to rely on an artificial intelligence to manage the function of the chip in this man's brain. And that in itself is a terrifying prospect, because who manages the artificial intelligence that is managing this guy's chip?
So, who watches the watchers? And I feel you. This is one of the bigger concerns for me, and I don't think that you could disentangle it at all from the question of profit. And so, oversight, regulation about how this sort of thing is implemented, and disallowing individuals from making poor decisions is an unfortunate reality. I say that because I would like people to be as free as they can be without harming other people and harming themselves in certain ways. Okay? But this is going to have to be heavily regulated. And what would be super terrifying is you have a company like Meta, formerly Facebook, develop a different type of technology, because you can get similar information from a different type of signal sensor. So infrared and EEG, you just put it on over your head. Right now, you will not get anywhere near the signal fidelity that you would get from an implant, right? But it's just going to keep getting better and better. So you buy an Oculus in the future, and this thing is like built into that, right? Do you want Meta to have the information coming off of your brain, where they know your mood, they know when you're focusing, and getting closer and closer? I mean, there's nowhere near that for this type of technology. But in MRIs, they can reconstruct images now with pretty high fidelity. So in 10 years, you could see the stuff, there's no way I'm putting on something from Facebook or Amazon with their current business model with that sort of thing. So the government is going to have to step in. How the government is advised on this sort of thing, and the lobby systems that are in place in various jurisdictions, etc. It's terrifying.
I mean,
it really is. But
money makes the world go round, brother.
But certain things are in motion. We're not putting the genie back in the bottle for AI. We're not putting the genie back in the bottle for genomics. We're not putting the genie back in the bottle for these sorts of technologies, the neuro interfaces. So,
and that is the reality, isn't it? As you say, the floodgates are open. The milk has been spilled. The horse has left the barn. Yada yada. Any number of other metaphors for the fact that we cannot yet turn back the hands of time. If Superman could just show up and fly around the world in reverse a couple of times.
Yes,
I don't even know if we would want him to at this point, but I mean, Superman, where are you? Anyway.
To the son of Krypton.
To the son of Krypton. All right. I need you to tell me, as we are leaving Guardian Talk Radio, what you think of the Glenrothes 12-year-old single malt Scotch, Speyside.
I think that this shelf that I'm saving for these various scotches, just I can't continue to widen this thing.
Mm-hmm.
So something is going to have to get bumped.
Yes.
To for this to take its rightful spot on the short list.
What I would do is start another shelf, but be that much more discriminating for what goes on that other shelf. I think of all of the things that we've had on the show or together since the Wednesday Scotch thing. I think this and maybe the Magnus from Highland Park are really the only two that we've had together that I think belong on a shelf like that. But that's my view, and you make your own choices. The Glenrothes 12-year-old, I highly recommend it. It's Jimmy's has it. I know that for sure. I don't know where else you can get it, but
excellent.
But in case it's something that you want to try, which I highly encourage, we are going to bid adieu to our audience on the wonderful Guardian Talk Radio. Matthew, it's always a pleasure to ride the airwaves with you. Thank you very kindly for your deep and insightful commentary on this scary as hell subject. And it is scary as hell because of all the people I trust to do this stuff, Elon Musk is not one. And not because I think he's crazy, but because I think he's so smart. And